So today I'm going to be looking at a piece by Austrian composer Georg Friedrich Haas. I'm going to just give you a brief introduction to the score here, and then we'll talk about his biography a little bit, and then get into listening. So this piece is Hyperion. It's for orchestra and light installation. There's a sort of spatialized element here. If you look at this is all in German, but I think you have strings up here. In the center is obviously the audience. So strings opposite pianos, and then woodwinds opposite brass. And then if you look behind each of these sections, it says, for example, the light for the strings is directly behind the pianos. The light for the pianos is directly behind the strings. So I think each one of these ensembles is being illuminated somehow, is how I'm interpreting this. If you speak German, maybe just take a second to read the note here. The orchestra in question is very large. It's and there are 2 saxophones in the winds, so I'm going to list 5 numbers in the wind parts. Okay, so the full instrumentation numbering would be 3-3-3-2-3, 4-3-3-2, 4 percussions, 4 pianos, 2 players, and strings. Doublings, flute, you need 1 piccolo for the 3rd flute, 1 English horn for the 3rd oboe, need a contra bassoon for the bassoons. The 2 saxophones in question are 1 tenor, 1 baritone. The percussion lists here seem very similar. So in terms of pitched instruments, percussions 1 and 2 have 5 crotals each and glockenspiel and vibraphone, whereas the percussions 3 and 4 have marimba and some number of crotals. And then as for the non-pitched instruments, everybody has gongs, everybody has a couple of timpani, everybody has woodblock, everybody has cymbals, it looks like, and assortment of drums for each performer. So it's unclear to me if they're sharing these instruments. I think not, because it seems like 1 percussionist is assigned to each group. If we go back to the group here, so percussion 1 is with the winds, percussion 2 is with the brass, percussion 3 with the keyboard, percussion 4 with the strings. Right, so this axis is percussions 1 and 2, which have the glockenspiels. And this axis is percussions 3 and 4, which have the marimbas. But every instrument has their own stave. It seems like the 2 pianists just have to deal with their own grand staff, and are sort of instructed if they need to move to different ones. And there is sort of like every sort of section, I mean, it's in orchestral order. You have like winds, brass, piano, strings, but each of these sections also has 2 single line staffs, one of them indicating like the lights, what's going on with the lighting, and then another one indicating the what the percussionist is doing in that particular group. So pretty straightforward layout when you think about what is happening here. So a little bit about Haas. He's another composer that was born just after the Second World War and is still living. So he was born in 1953 in Austria, and his most famous work is In Vain, which is another orchestra piece. It's more of a chamber orchestra piece. That might have been a more predictable piece of his to start with, but this is the only orchestra piece of his I have the score for. So we're going to be looking at Hyperion, which was written 6 years after that. And yeah, born in Graz, and studied at the University of Music and Performing Arts, Graz. Studied with Friedrich at University of Music and Performing Arts, Vienna. And took the computer music course at EarCam in 1991. Salzburg Festival Fellowship. And I think those are sort of the big points. He's also a professor at Columbia University currently. So, yeah, he's sort of like this post-spectral composer who doesn't really go by the spectral label. He's very indebted to the work of Ligeti, and he's interested in like micro-polyphony, micro-intervals, the overtone series, and lots of like very highly demanding pieces in terms of like setup. Yeah, I guess like a lot of spectralists or post-spectralists, he's like doesn't really like the intellectualism of certain strands of modernist music, but he's still writing modernist music technically. More recently, his personal life has gotten some attention. He has like his wife is a BDSM educator, and the New York Times published an article about their relationship. This is back in 2016 though, so it's kind of old news, but yeah, he's sort of a fascinating figure in spectral music and in America. As always, the link to the recording I'm listening to is in the video description. And I won't be providing the score as it is copyrighted, but and also this one is like really bad quality, so I'm just gonna get like the skeleton of it in front of me and just kind of see generally what's going on. And if you want to hear my thoughts, just stick around past the little transition here. So as it turns out, the lights conduct each section of the ensemble, which makes a lot more sense than what I was assuming. And this particular recording was the SWR Symphony Orchestra Baden-Baden und Freiburg, conducted by Rupert Huber. And yeah, that was done with a light installation, obviously. I'm assuming this screenshot is somewhat like what the installation looked like. It's pretty obvious once you look at the score that this isn't conducted normally. There's like a lot of stuff that is just measured in seconds with cues from the light staves, basically. And there's only a few sections, maybe actually just two, one of them at the very end, one in the middle, that have bar lines. And those moments are really interesting, I think, because they sound very like plain and simple, and it's a moment where like everyone in the ensemble kind of locks in. I assumed, that there's going to be some microtonal piano stuff going on with the four pianos, and there is, and it's a really fantastic sound and very integral to the way the piece sounds, is this microtonal piano stuff. And I think a lot of it is important in the harmonic series sections. There's like, it must be required to tune some of the pianos to like the harmonic series or something, or maybe it's just approximated. I'm not sure. If you have four pianos, you can divide each. You can divide into eighth tones, which is pretty accurate. So maybe that's what went on here. It was pretty loud throughout. Comparing it to like In Vain, I think In Vain has more diversity of gestures, and it's more gradual and like process based. This, because it's such a bigger ensemble, it's more like sound massy, and there is like this. There are these transitions from like slower sustained stuff to faster stuff, but it's not nearly as gradual or large scale as some of the stuff in Vain. It's more like you have like 30 seconds of this and then a minute and a half of that, and then it it kind of cycles through a bunch of different ideas. Some things to marvel at in this score are the more contrapuntal moments. You can really visually see it on the page because each page takes up so much of the piece's duration. Like some of these pages are quite long, so it's really interesting seeing the line work in some of his more contrapuntal textures. As I said before, the resolution on this is like awful. You can't read anything, so that's about as detailed as my perspective is going to get. I think also visuals can help guide the listener a lot. So it's possible that my listening experience would be enhanced a lot if I got to see the visuals. I think it's easier to pay attention to a visual for a long period of time, whereas sound you have to make a constant effort to remember what you just heard. So it's a lot harder to sort of like remember large sections of sound. But if it's guided by a visual, it's totally different. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Hyperion, and in a second I will pull up the piece for next session. Next up is another piece for orchestra and electronics from 2006. It's Javier Torres Maldonado piece, and yeah, that'll be that.